Yes. All right, so we're recording now. Hi, everyone. Ian Aldridge here from Progressive Legal, as well as Clare Mould joining the team. Say hi, Claire.
Hi there. Welcome.
And, yep, good idea. Let's all make sure our phones are on silent. Moi included.
Apologies.
No, that's okay.
That's the grandfather clock in the background. Apologies. There's nothing I can do about that.
All good. And please meet Alison Balch from Halo Communications, who has agreed to come on today as our in-house kind of expert and give us some tips and tricks from a development perspective, and also some legal stuff that she's seen, and just practical tips being a developer herself, and managing and seeing various cases coming towards her that she's had to deal with for clients. And she's the first in the inaugural invitee to our webinars. And also she's working on the current website for Progressive Legal, and relaunching Legal Shield and Law in a Box, which is all very exciting, and should be coming out in 4 to 6 weeks, which is excellent. But we're super excited, and must say that we've found the process so different to previous web developers that we've engaged. Now that we've found Ali, and Ali's not paid to be here today. She's giving her time for us, which is fantastic. And likewise, we don't we don't get anything by it elsewhere. We were just talking to Ali, about all this sort of stuff to get some tips for people, and we just thought she had so much valuable information that we need to get her on the webinar to be able to share with everyone as well. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone knew, what that situation was. We are absolutely privileged to be able to bring this presentation to you today. We're going to keep it at half an hour, so that you know that you're only going to be on for half an hour. So it's going to be really, really fast paced. There's so much information to get through, and so many legal pitfalls and tips and tricks and things that you need to consider when engaging web developers. But thanks so much for your time today, Ali. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
I'm just going to share my screen. Am I sharing my screen now with you guys?
Not yet.
Okay. All right. Let me share the screen with the PowerPoint slides. Are they all up now, guys?
They are, but if you just go full screen.
Yeah. Oh, where's my full screen? No, I've lost it. Oh, there we go. Easy peasy. No, not quite. View slideshow. That's what I want to do.
Sit down. There you go.
Slideshow.
No.
All right, we're off. Okay, so first of all, disclaimer, wouldn't be a legal webinar without one, right? This webinar is for general informational purposes only. It's not to be taken as legal advice. For specific legal advice, please come and speak to us directly. We'll have contact details at the end, but you can contact Claire or I to speak more about anything that's covered in this webinar. A lot of situations, legal advice is specific and personal, but this is just general legal information. Please take it as such. Claire, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, absolutely. So 2 things you're going to have a grasp of by the end of this session. First of all, we're going to go through some of the risks that you ought to be aware of when dealing with website developers. So we're talking about legal risks here. Secondly, we're going to give you some hints and tips and advise you on what steps you can take to mitigate those risks and protect your business.
One of the major things that we've encountered, and a lot of other people who have gone through the process before, and small business owners, because this is a very unregulated industry, there's not a lot of rules and regulations around the engagement of developers. And if you're only doing it for the first time, which a lot of us as business owners are, there's a lot to do in terms of due diligence, and like if you were engaging an employee, I think those sort of things still apply when you're engaging someone to look after the outward brand of your business. So it's really important that you make a couple of quick checks about the people that you're engaging, and that might be, you know, getting three people that they've worked with before and running through, you know, a comprehensive list of questions about, you know, what they did, you know, what they got the developer to do, how were they in terms of the performance, did they stick to timelines, a whole host of questions that you might be interested in, to make sure that this person who has got 3 referees, and just making sure that they are going to be capable of delivering what you have asked.
Even if they are your friend, we see time and time again clients say, oh, you know, I got this person, I've known them for ages, or she's a friend, he's a friend, he said he could help me out. More often than not, it goes pear-shaped. So you've even got to do your checks on your friends.
Yep, absolutely. And also checking the business registration as well. It's a really simple process to do. We had a web developer that didn't even have, you know, the ABN that they provided us wasn't even registered. So we had to make sure that the contract was in the right name. Otherwise, there would be no legal recourse against that particular developer. If, you know, and we find this a lot with small businesses engaging with third parties that aren't employees, to make sure that these businesses that they're engaging with, the right details are on the contract, and they're currently registered. So many business owners deal with third parties that aren't registered. You know, it's not funny. And at the end of the day, if it all goes pear-shaped, you know, you may not have any legal recourse against, you know, against them. Another issue is, you know, a non-disclosure agreement. It's a really hot topic online, and you'll see a lot of people banning about advice which they're not legally qualified to do. But if an idea is really important and you want to protect it, there's, you know, the general advice that we provide is that a non-disclosure agreement or a confidentiality agreement with a developer is a good start, especially when you don't know them from a bar of soap. You know, and if you've got an idea that you think is worth protecting, and that particular developer, you know, may have the means or resources, you know, to do this themselves if they just decided to go ahead and do it, or tell someone else. It's a case-by-case basis, and there's no one size fits all advice in that regard. And I'm sure, Ali, you've got your own views on it as well. But
it's really important as well that you don't just use any NDA. I hear quite a few people say, oh yeah, I just got one from the internet, I'm just going to use that. No, because the NDA has to fit the particular arrangement that you're entering into. You know, you might even be using one that's not even compliant with Australian laws, which means it's not even worth the paper it's written on. So, you know, don't just use an NDA, but don't just use any NDA. Get legal advice.
Yeah. Another thing is the importance of the briefing process and scoping. You know, when we engaged Ali, we had a 21-page scoping document, which Caroline put together for us, which was fantastic, which really set out and thought about the process, what we are trying to achieve, some examples of other websites that we liked, so that they could get a feel for where we wanted to go with it. Ali, have you got some input on that?
Absolutely. I think transparency with your developer is the biggest thing across every step of the way, and particularly at the forefront of the development project. It's really important to be clear about your expectations and their expectations on deliverables as well. So as Ian said, there was a 21-page scoping document for the new progressive site with a bit of light time reading, but worth it every step of the way. We also, when we develop websites for other people, we actually charge a fee for a scoping session where we sit down for around 3 hours. We talk to them about what the objectives of the website are, what they want to achieve from it, how it's going to work. We talk about user experience. We talk about the look and the aesthetics. So it's really important to make sure that every step of the way you're clearly communicating your expectations. And the best way to do that is in writing with a scoping document.
And then really go through it with them afterwards and make sure that everything is understood, and you know, and a good initial briefing process to ask all the questions about how does this work, what does that do, how do you want this to look, etc., etc.
I think one of the scariest things for me is when people start developing projects without actually asking what your end goal is. If they're just doing it because it looks nice, if they're doing it for, you know, reasons other than what your end goal is, whether that's generating leads, making sales, engaging clients, delivering webinars, it's really important to make sure that that scoping document clearly outlines your objectives.
Yeah. Ian, I think we've lost the slideshow. It's
Yeah, no worries. I just had to close my Outlook so I wouldn't get any more messages.
Okay. Oh, we didn't see any. It's fine.
Cool. No worries. Let me just share the screen again.
The next thing is that the importance of committing the web developer to a contract. You know, when you spend the time at the outset defining your scope, you know, getting all of your key terms agreed, commit it to a contract so that it acts almost, you know, it's sort of like a framework, a governing document that you can look to in the event that, you know, something may go wrong. And it's not just for your benefit, it's for the web developer's benefit as well. So we always tell clients to be wary of web developers who aren't keen to commit to a contract. As I said, it's for both parties' benefit. And even if your web developer is your friend, as I said time and time again, people say, oh, it's just my friend, you know, we've verbally agreed, it's all fine. Still, take the time, sit down, get it in writing. That way you've got a legally binding document to protect the both of you.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things that you need to include in the written document to make sure that it covers, and to make sure it covers both parties in the event that something happens, or a whole host of stuff, and we'll go through those in a moment. Claire, do you want to take the first planning one? I'll take the second one.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess the most important thing at the outset is to obviously agree on what the scope of your relationship is. You know, what exactly are you engaging the developer to do? Ali, would you mind giving some examples of common scopes that you would use?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the biggest things is the difference between design and development and user experience as well. So a graphic designer could easily design a website, but that might not necessarily translate into a great user experience. So it's very important to define what skills your web developer has within that scoping document, or where they might need to outsource that. So talking about, do you have the combination of design, development and user experience to make my website look good, function well and be a good experience? So that's one of the biggest things in the scoping document, is understanding your objectives and your web developer skills as well. And also, you know, big things like functionality. So you don't necessarily have to know how something is coded into the website, or what plugin needs to be used, or what platform needs to be used. You need to communicate your objectives with the web developer, and it's then up to them for them to come back and say, I recommend, based on this functionality you require, I recommend this implementation. So that's a really important part of the scoping document as well.
Yeah, great.
And what platforms are they going to be using? What code is it going to be written in? I've heard some pretty horror stories in terms of people writing different code, or in writing the wrong language that isn't going to be able to be used later down the track, or even going for custom design websites when they're not really necessary, and it can all be done simply just on WordPress.
That's really important if you want to manage it moving forward. Is it built in a way that your developer always has, you always have to go back a developer to have it changed? So we always recommend making sure that there's a content management system included, whether that is used as part of a WordPress website, or Drupal or Joomla, or whichever platform your developer chooses to build it in, or you agree to build it in. It's important for them to understand your expectations of how it's going to be managed moving forward.
Yep.
And just as important as deciding what is in the scoping document is deciding and agreeing on what is outside the scoping document. You know, what's not included, what can't your web developer do, and what's the plan for addressing what they can't do? Are you comfortable with them outsourcing things that they can't do? Or would you rather go somewhere else that can offer you that whole, that holistic service? Some things that are not often included are design work, stock images. Ali, is there anything else that, you know, you typically wouldn't include within
Domain
your
name registration and hosting is a big one. So where who owns the domain name and who owns the hosting. I always recommend that the client owns everything and gives the developer access. I've seen way too many times where there's been a falling out somewhere along the way. You've paid progress payments and all of a sudden you've lost everything because the developer owns all of it along the process. Another thing is things like cross-platform testing. You know, when you get to the end and the website is delivered to you as ready to go live, has your developer tested it on Mac and a PC and on Safari and Firefox and Google Chrome? Has it been tested on an iPhone, on an iPad, on a Samsung, on a Windows phone? So cross-platform testing is really important as well. And the last one I would say there is search engine optimization. Not all designers and developers will do SEO, which will get your website onto the first page of Google. If that's not the case, then they need to provide recommendations for how that is still going to be optimized along the way. So whether they provide an outsourced recommendation or they teach you how to import a plugin and do it yourself, it's very important to address that at the beginning of the process.
Yeah, obviously from that you can see there's a whole host of stuff that you might think is included in, you know, as part of, you know, web development, but it, and obviously unless it's clearly communicated that it's not, you know, this is where communication issues and disputes arise when there is some confusion, or if it's not clear, or if there's some ambiguity, you know, in the contract, or it's not, or it hasn't been canvassed before. It's good for both parties to be able to make sure that all this is kind of dealt with prior to signing on the dotted line. And usually paying some form of a deposit to get underway, which most developers, you know, will do. A lot of the times as well in the planning stage, you know, a lot of developers will insist on an initial deposit, and just to be really clear about what that initial deposit constitutes, and making sure that, you know, the total amount of contract, you know, working out the percentages of what is to be delivered at what points along the way. We'll get to that in a second. But that's all part of this initial sort of scoping area.
Yeah, there were just, sorry, 3 more points just to quickly run through.
Yeah.
About where the website is going to be held while the work is approved, who has access, the importance of sitemap and wireframes prior to build. Ian, do you have any particular comments on that one?
Yeah, I think it's you know, certainly something that's come to us a few times, is when a developer doesn't provide these sitemaps and wireframes prior to going ahead and building the project. It can get very messy because there's so much. It's just vitally important to have some sort of a guideline to how your site is going to look, how it's going to function. And obviously Ali will be able to pitch in on this as well. I'm sure she's seen hundreds of evidences of this not happening. Ali?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, it's with transparency and making sure communication is right, and you have shown your communication, shown your objectives to the developer. It's important to understand that you have complete intrinsic knowledge of your business, whereas your web developer might not. So while they might be nodding their head and telling you, yes, they understand exactly what you're after and what you're looking for, what's in their head might not necessarily be what comes out at the end. And that's by getting wireframes, which are essentially box designs of how your website's going to lay out and the structure of each of the pages. They are so important to have because you can make sure before anything starts to get built and when it's difficult to change, that you and your developer have a similar understanding of what each page is designed to look like and to function.
Yeah.
And then it allows also copy to be written into those, you know, wireframes as well. so that when it comes time for the site, the design phase, the copy phase, and then and to have these approval steps set out along the way. Just finally on this, I'll just cover off on this, Claire. In terms of viewing other work that they've done, a lot of people just sort of go head on in and go, oh yes, they were able to convince me that they were going to be able to do this work. And as entrepreneurs and small business owners, we get really excited when we see something, or when we talk to somebody. They may initially come over very, very competent, but I'd be sort of very hesitant to make sure that that you've seen other work that they've done, to have a look and make sure that they're going to be able to build what you want, and either have built something similar before, or are capable of doing what you want them to do by looking at other work that they've done.
Yeah.
And really, really important in this planning phase as well is, what are your specifications for the website? The key milestones in terms of when things are going to be delivered, and when progress payments are going to be made, just so that things are kept on track. Whether you need weekly or bi-weekly or monthly or fortnightly work in progress meetings to make sure that the program is being met stage by stage, just like you would if you were thinking about building a house. Certain things need to happen by certain times in order for the final delivery date to be met. And in terms of the final delivery date, completion date, a lot of times people leave out of contracts, when the actual delivery, when the final completion date will be, and what are the consequences that flow from a builder, if you like, which a lot of building contracts do have nowadays, is penalties for late completion, or some incentives for early completion. That might be something you want to consider putting in the contract as well, to give an incentive to a developer to provide this by a certain time. I think just sort of generally overall in this industry, just like the building industry, reaching critical dates is a really, really big area of dispute, and a lot of developers that we've kind of seen issues with have not been able to deliver by certain dates, which has led to frustration and also lost opportunity when people want to launch by a certain date, when they've got a whole bunch of other things that are going on in order to launch, and costs and all the rest that flow if things aren't met by a certain date. Say, for instance, with sales websites that want to be operating before Christmas, or before certain sales dates, really need to be very clear about what happens if they are not able to meet these key dates. Then what happens, and thinking about what causes flow from that. Are you able to terminate the contract at that point if certain things aren't met and not dealt with within, say, for instance, 7 days or some reasonable period, or if they're not able to complete if they are not able to complete by a certain date, or know that they are not going to be able to complete by a certain date, then what obligations flow from that? Are they obliged to tell you that they're not going to be able to meet that date when they become aware that they're not able to? Ali, do you want to? Yeah.
Sorry. I was going to say, these are all things super important to cover in the contract. Have a process. If the web developer, and this can only be achieved by chatting through with the developer about, what they consider reasonable, what you would consider reasonable. What process? What's the process if there's an expected delayed? How do you grant an extension of time? That type of thing. Sorry, Ali.
No, that's okay. It's a very important point. Making sure that there is a time frame in place, so deliverables every step of the way. We use Google Sheets because it's transparent and everyone can see it every step of the way. We also use the Basecamp project management system, where tasks are allocated to a certain person. So if you are dealing with multiple people in the team as well, it's important to have an escalation hierarchy there. So with Progressive, for example, there are a number of stakeholders in there. If one of them is, for example, delaying a certain part of it, which is going to push out the deliverables, we would then escalate that to Ian and have the conversation with him around, you know, how that is going to affect the overall deliverable of the website. So again, transparency, very important, and making sure that you put it in the contract around, if my developer is causing this delay and it's going to cause me a loss of sales, are there ramifications for that? Do we just want to be able to terminate straight away, or how are we going to approach that?
Perfect.
Yeah, and that's another good point as well with you know, with making sure you've got a project management system in place that can track, you know, instructions and you know, and have a written record of what is happening at certain times, so that everyone knows how to kick a goal, and if they're dragging their heels, and they're, you know, then people can follow up and say, you know, we need this now, or this is the deadline for this certain action that needs to take place. Just so, I mean, it's not just sort of dealing on a Word document where, you know, you get, you know, 3 or 4 people chiming in on a Word document, which can then just become completely onerous and futile. Another thing to consider is intellectual property. You know, who owns the intellectual property at what time? I'm just noting the time now, so we'll just wrap through the last 3 minutes. Intellectual property is a huge issue for dealing with web developers. The ordinary legal position is that whoever creates the intellectual property owns it, unless it's been assigned otherwise. So just like if you're dealing with a graphic designer, you need to have some form of clause in the contract to make sure that intellectual property is handed over either at completion or payment of fees, or right from the start. At some point in time, you know, you as the business owner and person paying need to make sure that the intellectual property is transferred at some point in time. It might be when you pay for that certain piece of intellectual property. If for some reason something happens during the process and the parties want to part ways, these are all the what-if questions that you need to deal with before you sign on the dotted line and draft this contract. Making sure that, okay, say for instance halfway through you lose faith in the developer and they're not able to deliver what you need, or something happens with the developer that means that you're not able to that they're not able to deliver on time, or something is frustrated that's outside the control of the developer. Then you want to make sure that this intellectual property is capable and able and written into the contract to be handed over.
Yeah.
But yeah, the overriding importance of a clear, structured approval process is really, really good. And having a project manager, either in your team or on their team or both, to make sure that you know, the cats are herded and all the sheep are in the pen at all times, so that this all happens in a very structured way, you know, along the process, and nothing is kind of held up.
Amendments are often a big issue, aren't they, Ali? And it's super important that you decide at the outset, okay, if I want to make a change, who pays for that change? You know, what's the process, again, to be covered off in the contract?
It's why it's so important for us to have the designs signed off from the very beginning. So our process goes: the creation of the sitemap, wireframes. We then design up all of the main pages in Photoshop, so you can actually see exactly what's going to be delivered, and that is how it's built. If you decide afterwards that, okay, I need that image to go there, or I want that button to do this or that, we do offer 2 rounds of changes, and I think it's very important to make sure that you speak to your developer about how many rounds of changes and reviews you get every step of the way, just to make sure that it's not set in stone. There is a little bit of flexibility there, but you're protected in case you change your mind about certain things, and your developer's also protected from the point of view that you just can't keep, you know, changing your mind and it goes on for 12 months. So you want to make sure that what is delivered is going to be practical for purpose, but also remember that your website is evolving, so it's never going to be perfect the first time that you launch it. It always needs to have evolution every step of the way.
Yeah, and I think I can imagine that some clients would have some unrealistic expectations of developers of how many rounds of changes that they might have or need, and making sure that those guidelines, you know, are clear about, you know, making sure that you are really sure about this before you approve, and making sure that you are really sure of it before you approve the next, so the design phase, for instance, or if you're not happy with it, then we can do one more round, and you've got one more chance, to make sure that everyone is happy. And at the end of the day, it's just making sure that both parties in a transaction, are happy, so that the clients will sing the praises of the developer, and the developer will be able to hold out to other clients. Look at this, look at this client that we helped, and look what we've done for them, and be part of their, part of their profile and part of their portfolio.
Yeah.
And acceptance testing. What was the? Wait.
Oh, sorry, acceptance testing. So, very important to have a clear process around acceptance testing. By acceptance testing, I mean, the checks and balances that you mentioned earlier, Ali, making sure that it works across a variety of platforms and applications, basically making sure that it works, right? That's right?
Yeah, absolutely. And also that it works for your market. Quite often we assume that everyone has the same amount of tech knowledge as us. If your market is perhaps the golden oldies or the silver surfers, you might need to make sure that your buttons are a lot bigger or your font is a lot larger. Depending on who your market is, they'll have a different level of knowledge. So just making sure that you test it with your market before you do send it live.
Yeah.
And then in terms of the post-delivery, what happens in terms of training, being able to either manage this sort of site yourself or your staff, training on how to use it, etc. And then what sort of ongoing support is there, for how long, and who pays, what are the rates? But they're all sort of very clear things that need to be in place in a contract, ideally.
It's true. And there should be a warranty period as well. Once a website's handed over, if you go in and start making changes and you break something, then absolutely there may be a charge for that. However, if you have done all of your cross-platform testing and a month down the track you come up with something that was developed incorrectly or has a bug or something like that, you should be able to go back to your developer for, we say 10 to 12 weeks, to make sure that is fixed free of charge for you as per the deliverables of the scoping document.
Great point. Thanks for bringing that up. That's excellent. I have a feeling that we'll be doing more webinars. Ali, there's lots to cover in this space, and we just wanted to provide a bird's eye sort of view for clients about just sort of major ticket items that we've come across on behalf of, in our experience, and also on behalf of clients. Just finally, we'd like to make a special offer to those people only on this webinar. Usually what we'll do is a web development contract or review for around 1,250 plus GST. What we do have is a Legal Shield seed package, which is $295 a month, including GST. Although we don't usually include a web development contract under it, we only usually include website terms and conditions, a privacy policy, and some form of waiver or disclaimer. We're willing to include not only that, but a non-disclosure agreement as well if you need, and a web development contract as a thank you for coming on and listening to us today. If you just go to progressivelegal.com.au or contact either myself or Claire, I've got Ali's email address there as well if you'd like to contact her at Halo Communications. I didn't include her mobile number because I didn't know whether she wanted us to. But there is her email, and if you'd like to check either Ali or ourselves out online, then please do so. Thanks so much for your time today. I know we ran over again, but we're only over by 5 minutes. I hope it's okay. I hope you got a lot of value out of today, and thanks so much, Ali, for joining us and giving some great insider knowledge too.
Great. And thanks, Liz. I can see you're commenting away there. Thank you. Thanks for joining.
Great. Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.